Good morning, everybody. I'm glad you could join us today for CoConnect. Today we're going to talk about turning barriers into opportunities. My name is Laura Hamilton. I am the HR Area Administrator for the Spokane campus. And these are just small little single point lessons that I put together to work through with teams on how to be more effective in working together. I think we have opportunities right now with looking at our work differently in light of everything that we're faced with, where we can take a step back and maybe look at some of our processes and the way we engage in the work that we do as a team. And so that's really what the intention of some of these just little short single point lessons are. So today again is on turning barriers into opportunities. So of course, first we have to define what is a barrier. So a barrier is going to be, let me see if I can, there we go. A barrier is going to be anything that stands in the way of our anticipated outcomes or the desires of our stakeholders. So even if we're meeting all of the anticipated outcomes, but the people who have a stake in the work that we do feels that the outcome isn't meeting their needs, that could be a barrier as well. It's also anything that makes a task more difficult, causes a waste, a redundancy, extra time, extra materials, extra costs. So basically anything that adversely affects the goodwill of our stakeholders. And again, we have various stakeholders that would include the people that we work with, our communities, our students, the Board of Regents, our faculty, you name it, different projects that we work on, we could have a number of different stakeholders. So we need to make sure that we are engaging in a way that's really meeting their needs and is taking into consideration their input. So there's a couple of type of barriers that we typically would look at. And some of those are gonna be the ones that are really easy to see and they're like bug spots on your windshield. And you see them and it's easy to focus on and they're really pretty irritating. Then there's going to be those hidden barriers where it lies kind of underneath the surface and they are more difficult to identify. So it's like that iceberg where the foundation of that is going to be below the surface. So what are the barriers that we face? One of the things that you can look at is what are the splats that you experience when you're a stakeholder. If you are a customer and you aren't receiving the attention you need, you're not getting the answers that you need. I know for me, sometimes those can be the splats that can be difficult. Sometimes they're people, sometimes they're products, sometimes they're policies, processes, or they could even be the physical facilities. So what are those things as you engage as a customer that are those minor annoyances that, that really make your experience less than ideal? And so how do we then identify the splats that other people are experiencing as they're working with our different teams? The more difficult ones, however, are going to be, they're going to be those hidden barriers. So a lot of organizations will go through these barrier walks where they can conduct and act as though they are a customer, a manager, a community leader. It can be done as a virtual process, and in our current environment, that's probably going to be the best way to do those, but really walking through all of our processes as if we are one of those stakeholders. So I see this actually happening a lot right now as we try to manage all of the changes that are occurring in light of the current pandemic. There are a lot of different groups who are kind of those trial groups to run through different processes, trainings, different needs that we have as an organization that have just come to light as we're trying to really mold the work we do to the current environment we find ourselves in. So as you do conduct these different walks, whatever process it may be that you're walking through as if you are the end user, jot down the barriers and identify different viewpoints. How is this going to work from an outside entity standpoint? How is it going to work from an internal user standpoint and a maintenance standpoint? How is it going to work and look if you're a student? It'll help you to identify those gaps, the areas that that are missing, and you can even invite outside parties to participate in that as well. So this is often implemented through different things that might look like a focus group, or it might look like a committee that works on different projects. And I apologize, this next slide did not have the transparency that I programmed into it, so it doesn't look very good. But some of the common hidden barriers as we think through that is going to be fears. When we do have employees who are experiencing fear about the work that they're responsible for, they're much less likely to be innovative and to think outside of the box and actually to step forward and recommend new and unique ideas of how to engage in the work. Gaps, if there are gaps in understanding of how we address our goals and our mission for a project, those gaps are going to impact the necessary outcome, whether it be our needed outcome or the needed outcome of our stakeholders. Resources, have we included not only the physical, tangible resources, but have we also included all of the skill resources that we have? Are there individuals who could help with a project that because of the experience and the knowledge that they have, they could add more to it? So have we thought through some of those pieces? Sometimes it's the team funk. Sometimes I find teams will get into a space where they're not spending the time to reflect on new ideas and to look at how to really engage in process improvement instead of just that firefighting mentality. And that can leave teams in a funk, which within itself can be a barrier, certainly a barrier to innovation and new ideas. And do we have stagnant minds? I have heard way too many times in my career, but this is the way we've always done it. And that is a common barrier for teams. And I would challenge all of you that if that is a funk or a stagnancy that's happening within your team, to really invite some innovation into looking at processes to see if there are better, more efficient ways to do the work that we do, because that gives us the time to really be able to look at other processes and projects and to add some new excitement into the work that we're responsible for. We do work most effectively when we work as a team to reduce barriers. Of course, all of us individually have the ability to engage with leadership, to engage with responsible parties, to look at barriers that we can impact and that we can reduce some of those difficulties. But it's much more effective when we have the buy-in of everyone who's on that team. Teams that are consistently spending time and making efforts to reduce barriers can move faster towards achieving their goals. They actually get a lot more done. When you do take the time to reduce barriers, the efficiency that happens is escalated. Changes can cause new barriers to arise. I think all of us have experienced that over the last several months as we've really tried to modify all of our work and all of our processes to this new telework environment and having meetings in different ways, taking time to make sure we're connecting with our colleagues in different ways. So constantly reviewing what the possible barriers are and reducing those should be a part of our everyday work. It shouldn't just be a, hey, let's look at it right now and now we're good and away we go. It should be something that we're readdressing regularly. Discovering and reducing barriers is easier, again, when we're doing that as a team for a lot of different reasons, but one is we're combining those talents, the skills, the insights, and the experience of a broader audience and a broader team to bring in to accomplish the work we're responsible for. So going back to constantly reviewing the possible barriers, one of the tools that I like to encourage my teams to use in identifying what those barriers are regularly, I recommend that they do a things gone right, things gone wrong, and that be a part of every agenda. That before we move into the agenda items, that we're talking about what are the things that are going really well. And it's important that we're maximizing and focusing on the things gone right, because our teams can capitalize on those skills. Why is it that it's going so right? What are the things that we've implemented that has made it a smoother process and that has really impacted our stakeholders in a positive way? We can make more difference in looking at the things gone right and implementing some of those tools more broadly in our teams than by focusing just on the things gone wrong. But it is important to focus on the things gone wrong, because a lot of those are going to be those splats, and they're going to be those barriers that we do identify more easily. And so my recommendation is always to take those things the things gone right. We celebrate the successes. We talk about how we're going to utilize and capitalize on those in other processes that we have. Are there ways that we can expand given that something is going right? But then on the things gone wrong, it's not my recommendation that that meeting is used to address the things gone wrong. That turns in usually to an agenda item for the next meeting. That way it gives everybody on the team to really take the time to brainstorm, to think through the issues and the problems more effectively, instead of it being, again, this more firefighter approach. We're actually processing through it. We're getting the right inputs and information. We're considering whether there are other audiences that need to be included in some of the decision making. And so that's more of a item for the next week. So why do we review the things gone wrong? Again, being aware of those barriers that our colleagues are experiencing allows us the opportunity to offer solutions to reduce barriers. One of the stories that's been shared with me in my career was through a program called the Outward Mindset. And there was this team of individuals that was working with an auto manufacturing company. And there was a brand new CEO. And as he was working with the leaders in this organization, they had a list where they would look at different projects, and they'd say, if it's a green light, it means everything's going fantastically, there are no problems, and we move ahead. Then there's the yellow light, that means we might be approaching some issues. We want to make everyone aware, and we want to be able to talk about it. And red light means, wow, there's a problem. We need to kind of halt the processes, figure out the problem, and then re-engage. And the leaders in this particular unit were not used to that type of transparency in really sharing the barriers. And the new CEO of this manufacturing plant was able to get one of the leaders of that group to be vulnerable enough to start to share some of the issues that they were experiencing. And as they did that, it was in one of those yellow light areas. It hadn't reached that critical capacity red light. But as that leader was willing to step in and say, here's some of the things that are coming up that I feel might be a problem, there was actually a leader on another team that was a part of their leadership team, but it was on another area of the plant, who said, you know, we have run into that previously, and here's what we did to correct that. So again, by making sure our colleagues are aware of some of those different difficulties that we might be facing, it gives us an opportunity to really lean on the skill sets and the knowledge and expertise of other people within our team that might have ideas on how to address the concerns more effectively. So, so again, that things gone right, things gone wrong, strong recommendation, start including that on your weekly meetings with your teams to give that opportunity for that constant review. And that is the single point lesson for today. I will be back on next Wednesday with another one for you. So thank you so much for joining us today.